Hello everyone! As the title of this video will probably suggest, we're doing a sketchbook tour today. Specifically, I'm going to show you this massive stack over here of sketchbooks that I filled out during the past 3 years, which is also coincidentally when I was in art school. Art school's not quite the exact term to describe what it was. I was really more of an illustration major in the admittedly pretty fleshed out art program at a college that technically does everything. One thing you're probably going to notice is that we're going to nicely, or we'll see how it goes, swap back and forth from these in-person live reactions and recorded voiceover like this. As you're going to notice later on, we have 6 sketchbooks, but I've edited the footage so that we bounce around between them. I was working on many of these sketchbooks simultaneously over the years. So, for example, sketches from my first ever college sketchbook have some of my earliest stuff, and then also stuff from a whole year later. So, I've arranged my footage so that my sketches are in chronological order. I think it'll be helpful for you, the viewer, to keep track of and to more easily see how my art changes over time. Okay, as the title might suggest, yeah, this was for my very first art class in freshman year. Oh, drawing 1. Also, for the left, you're gonna notice that for a lot of these sketchbooks, I like just filling in blank space by just sticking random stuff in here. But yeah, got some business cards here of some different artists. And then this is like part of a project that I would do in another class. We were using a laser printer. But yeah. More business cards. This is so many. I actually have a bunch more over here in the cart. I'm looking at it right now of random stickers and stuff that I need to tape in somewhere. These first handful of pages, I think we were given an article to read by my professor about like the nature of drawing, and so just notes on that. And this sketchbook is going to get messy really fast because this drawing class was very much about observational drawing, specifically with graphite and charcoal. So we're starting off with an absolute non-banger. So sorry. Yeah, the first batch of these sketches in this first sketchbook are not super interesting, to me at least. A lot of it is just attempts at drawing objects realistically, keyword attempts, and some studies of artists who are mostly dead, and looking at whatever their techniques happen to be when they were drawing. Like, look at me here. I'm just flipping through pages and have nothing really to say. There are a couple highlights though, mainly with my old OC Tara. Love her. I drew a quick little redesign of probably like my oldest OC that I still think about. Just Tara. She's this little angel OC. Love her. I miss her. I like this sketch. Down here. That is cute. That is a hand. Goodness. Not even close. "30-second sketches." I think for some of our first classes, we had to kind of get into the swing of drawing. We were drawing on pretty large pieces of paper. And I think we did this exercise where you had to draw objects initially at 30 seconds and then like 15 and 5. And I think the idea is just to kind of retrain your arm and your way of thinking to prioritizing on sketching really quickly and just breaking down an object into its most important strokes, which I think is an exercise that helps with line confidence and not being so rigid. Here's a little actually part of the final project. The final project was a still life that we would design and make ourselves. This is Tara again. That must have been, yeah, obviously that's probably why I was sketching her in the previous page, is because I wanted to give her design a little bit of tweaks before I worked on this project. We are now going to switch over to the second sketchbook of that stack, so that we can still be showing stuff from my first semester of college. Unfortunately for me, at this point, I have just barely started the second sketchbook, and I'm already going a little insane. God, my brain is so filled with thoughts right now. Ugh. My brain is going so fast. I think it's like a, you know, that one episode of SpongeBob where Gary's being trained to go into the race? That clip of him exploding or whatever, that's how like my brain feels sometimes when it kind of goes back and forth between zoomy speed and fog. Fun. This is for a 2D design class, I believe. Starting off with some critique. Our first project was about arranging different, we basically had 3 like Inktober looking thinking prompts, and we got like 5 black squares or whatever, black paper squares, and you had to cut and draw on them in a way that like represents the prompt. Weird, but this is 2D design. This is like a very basic of basics class. So I think as part of our design class we were told to do at least 15 sketches of different ideas and then get feedback on ones that were the best. And so you can see the ones that I would end up pursuing being in here, which honestly I still like the idea of like making so many different small thumbnail ideas for designs and compositions and stuff, just to really get all of your ideas out there. Sometimes, half the time it's like you do feel like you're going through a painstaking process, but you finally do, like at sketch 20, find the perfect composition. And sometimes you just do all that process and the first like 2 things you came up with are still the best. What the heck was this? I think this was just some like elements and principles of design notes and then random doodles because I was bored. Here's the back. And then random notes. We learned about the concept of color bias. Maybe one of the most confusing things about color theory. That's saying something. So this is why usually do those work to do something because some blues is like different colors. I just want you to make other that has to be so every example, this yellow has a bias because it mixes over with blues. It's more you don't make red ones. Whereas this yellow, you can try to mix it with blue. It's gonna be a little muted. This yellow is like it needs more orange than green, and then you get the same color with blue. It's the same way it's like if you're using the problem is that it's all the blue has all over. It's one of the oranges, it's one of the greens, it's different around. It was very mind melting when first learning about it, but and it makes you sound like an insane person trying to explain it, but it's just it's a fun. Speaking of insane, here's a beautiful series. This is so stupid. Local girl goes insane looking at squares. It's so So, what the heck is this? I need this moment. I hope my dog Daisy knows that she is my grounding technique to keep me from going completely insane. It almost works. Okay, so what is this? So, I think we were given some like color paper, and we were assigned just to play around with different types of color combinations, both with like contrasting colors, analogous, monochromatic, blah blah blah, and seeing how colors look together. This is also just an experiment in color theory, like these 2 greens are the same green, but when you put it in yellow it looks a certain way, when you put it in blue it looks like another way. It's the sort of color theory that everyone in art TikTok loves making jokes about, right? But it's just, this one I think is the most obvious. This one looks a lot brighter than this one. Crazy. Poop and pee. Okay. These random sketches, we were doing like a color wheel thing, and then this was like the final project. We were making a zine explaining one of the principles of design. We drew them out of a hat. I got movement, which actually ended up working out because one of my older OCs from freshman year has both water and lightning powers. It's like vaguely storm-based, and I got to put my OC in there. I think I got a pretty good grade in that assignment, so it works out. Look at it. It's naked. So sad.
With Sketchbook 2 completely done, we now can move on to Sketchbook 3 and continue the trend of looking at stuff from my first semester of college.
Next, sketchbook. 3D design. Blur. All of this, except Marianne. I love her. She's so epic. I love depressed people. Okay, 3D design. Now we're back into sketches that look. What the heck is this? I guess this is what happens when you drop in your brain. This one's a little better, although it has been smudged. So, yes. 3D design was a weird one. And it was pretty much, yeah, you worked on 3D projects. Honestly, my favorite part of 3D design, or my favorite little memory of 3D design, was when my professor was like listing off the different art majors and explaining how the stuff we were learning was going to be applicable for our future practices. And he gets to illustration, he's like, honestly, I don't really know what illustration will get a whole lot from this. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, Sketchbook 3 has some dead areas here too. A lot of it's just planning for 3D projects that, for the most part, I don't have anymore. Except for this one.
Oh yeah, my little messed up little guy. This is another 3D project. I still actually have it. It's very cursed. I'll show you a picture at some point. But yeah, I think this project was like, we were making it out of clay, and I think it was supposed to represent how we were feeling about our lives. I was very mentally ill at the time. A lot of life circumstances. We can just leave it at that. However, I think by the time this project was over, I got some accommodations, and my life was a lot better. Honestly, genuinely, that's one of my biggest pieces of advice to people going in college in general, is always check to see if you can get accommodations, if you need them. I know so many of us artists are mentally ill, which probably means you could maybe benefit from some food or housing accommodations. And so you should see if your school has a DAS. Oh yeah, speaking of mentally ill, I think I ripped this weird little thing because I was having a little bit of a mental thing. That's so sad. I feel bad for young me.
We are jumping back to Sketchbook 1, this time to look at my second semester of college, and also the summer that follows.
Oh my gosh. Real Ash moment. This is one of my two, like, webcomic characters, or I guess at this point in time, future webcomic characters. This is Ash, my beloved. This is gonna end up being really funny foreshadowing for my next video, or an upcoming video. The subsequent second semester of college, I had no classes where I was sitting down and doing art, except for like an online asynchronous stuff, where we had to work in Adobe. Boo! And and so I had a little bit more of an itch to draw my own stuff, so that's what this is. Little Ash Mermaid. I think actually the idea of Ash Mermaid, or drawing this little guy in a mermaid, came in a dream where I thought about like two future webcomic characters in essentially a mermaid AU. You might see the other one. We'll get there when we get there. And then I drew him as a little fairy. This sketch is made with these. And anything that's has this particular color palette and texture is always going to be made with mechanical color pencil lead. It's kind of fun working with limited color palette and mixing colors together to see what you get. This is a really weird project. We had to like, I have no idea what we were actually doing. Something about collage. And so I made some sort of kind of weird core image. It doesn't quite make sense at this angle. This is supposed to kind of be a door. One of the classes that I had my second semester, what I was taking was the Gen Ed art class, where you're learning about music and art in a more academic way. One of the assignments was to go out to different events. And so the theater program was doing Godspell. I did some random sketches to show that I was there. I remember really liking how this girl turned out. She She's the one who looks the most like the actual person in real life. Yeah. This is my attempt at like a lower perspective. I should have done some practice before I attempted to do this with my characters. Oh well, this was another live concert. This was a jazz concert of some kind, and so I was just sketching what I was looking at. This is another sketchbook for the same assignment. Caption self-explanatory. I was vibing. Sketches for another project that I would end up doing. And then this is some random concept sketches for my Adobe class. Boo! And I think for our final project for that Adobe class, boo, was to come up with a hypothetical magazine cover, and so I'm like, the only way I'm gonna have any interest in this is if I can tie it back to some OCs of mine. No, this is a little drawing of my dog, Hunter. He's a little fat guy, little old man. He's not with us anymore. Very sad. But I do have him memorialized in this drawing. These are some thumbnails for that magazine project. This was me drawing a virtual gallery. These are some sketches for like a hypothetical fictional race where everyone is Jim. Steven Universe moment. I need to watch that show. Random sketch of my other little OC question mark.
Okay, so I attempt to explain what this OC is a few times while I'm recording these sketchbook tours, but all of them kind of suck because I make them more weird and complicated than it actually has to be. So, this is Balab. Not to be confused with me, Bella B, and she is a representation of something very specific about me. She is a drawn representation of how I happen to act in my dreams. Yeah, I'm the type that keeps track of their dreams a lot. It's just something that I've always been fascinated by, and I've noticed over the years the way I act in my dreams is very different to how I am in real life. So I took some of that and mixed in some old teenage angst, and you get Balab. You can sort of see that there's this kind of weird gray area between her being an OC, a self-insert, and maybe some secret third thing. It's in the sense that she's similar to me in a lot of ways, but I let her kind of do her own thing for the sake of the story of the webcomic that she's a character in. I think that's the gist of it. Let's move on.
This sketch is the start, or the progression of my liminal space phase, which, spoiler alert, hasn't left me yet. This is a whole chunk that's just thrown in there. Goodness. And then another comic sketchbook idea. The text is left blank here. I think for this project, the final thing, I scanned both of these sketches and then animated some of the final text to like move and twitch a little bit. And then here comes the face of the sketchbook. That is why this one in particular is so thick. This is another Tara in her alternate outfit that I actually kind of like more. I think it's a little more fun of a design. Short dress. Me the artist. And then this is a continuation of my liminal space phase sketch project that did not turn out as good on paper as it did in my head. I think this was in my phase where I think we've now solidly hit the summer. And I think we're in that phase where I was doing some animatic type stuff to post onto my Instagram because I think Reels or something might have just gotten introduced. I wanted to get on that meta. And so I did some digital stuff and I tried doing something where it's traditional. That didn't work. Here's the sketch thing. Here's a quickie little redesign of my OC. Here's some random composition paper things I had. Webcomic OCs. And now we're gonna get into the phase where I have multiple random shenanigans between my OCs. A lot of these are obvious references to other character dynamic memes and things that you've seen before. But yeah, look at them. They're good buddies. Go start at this one. This is just like a random comic. I think I posted it on Instagram. I think like I drew like a I made like a work in progress video of just me sketching some of the hair, I think. And I think that got more attention than the finished thing altogether. Which, honestly, that video looked more aesthetically pleasing than the comic as a whole. I should have thought a little bit more about the composition and making it look interesting than I did. But this was me in the summer, so I wasn't really thinking, period. This is kind of getting at the basic premise of what would eventually become the comic. We have the little goofy guys in their colored lead little isometric room thing. This is pretty. I still like this. Was I imagining this as like a train car? The window like that, I doubt it. Whenever you ask me to draw dragon, it's always a rain wing from Rings of Fire. That's always the default. It's always been that way ever since I was like 10. Love Wings of Fire. It's the only book series I care about. And this sketch is still cute. It just makes me feel really weird and kind of cringe because it's like, ah! Which I should maybe explain the reaction. These two characters, they aren't romantic coded at all anymore, dear God. No. Oh God, help me. I'm so adverse to it now because it's just like, at some point before the comic story became realized, I'm like, the story makes way more sense if the story is about a platonic friendship. And no romance happens, help me. So I'm just, when I see anything that implies romantic coding, I'm like, what? So, here's the word sketch. That is really odd. Why are her legs like that? Yeah, again, learning perspective. Group picture of my other OC. 2 webcomic OCs with the rest of the cast. Oh, this is so weird because some of their designs are outdated. These two especially. This person's goth now, by the way. So that's an example. But yeah, my 2 webcomic OCs technically will at some point have 5 other friends. I just don't get to use them in the webcomic yet because it doesn't make sense for its story. But I like imagining them in a bajillion different AUs. Maybe there'll be another video, me just drawing characters in AUs that are only in my head but I've never drawn. I don't know what the point of these studies were. I am so weird about studies sometimes, especially me from 3 years ago. I can't sit down and learn like how to draw a body in perspective for the life of me, but I'll sit and just draw a bunch of different mouths, because sure. I feel like this is kind of pointless. But yeah, I kind of did the study thing where I just took a bunch of images of clothing, for example, and I kind of just drew them, but I feel like there's got to be a more efficient way to study this. I think a study like this would have been useful if at some point I went from, instead of drawing from reference images, I actually tried to draw them on characters. And then surprise, another group picture. This one's cute. These are some poses. And then these are like random eye variations and noses. I just don't know why I needed to like draw a bunch of these like it was a study. And then shoes. Shoes is like, this is a slightly more useful study. But most of these still look pretty okay. I think I like this one the best. Actually, this one and then like this shoe, not the other one. We've now gotten to the end of summer break. I think I drew this in commemoration of it, based on a real dream I had where I fell asleep. Fell asleep in the car after a beach trip. So yeah. I have a whole... Okay, so what are these with the, like, Inktober names?
Okay, so I don't really explain this well in the video either. Basically, these are just drawn representations of real dreams that I had, in which my 2 webcomic OCs, Ash and Balab, were involved. And the Inktober names are just labels that I would give each dream in order to remember them when I would go back and draw them.
So yeah. Here's another one of those dream personas. This one was horrifying. The little Balab, this was her face. Terrifying. Especially since, like, in most of these dreams, I'm from the lab persona POV. And so looking in the mirror and having this be your face, that's some horror. Now we've jumped into second year of college. This is for a concept art and storyboarding class, I think. The prompt was to create characters that are fitting for a space cowboy theme, and so I came up with this random character named Celia, I believe. And she's essentially like a stable girl, but in the sense that she's a mechanic and her horses are lunar rovers. Actually, just like because it's a storyboarding class, technically it's an animation class, not an art or illustration one. And so I felt the need to sort of simplify my style to something a little more cartoonish for the sake of the assignment. And I actually kind of like it. It worked. I think at some point later you'll find that I tried drawing other characters in like a more like exaggerated style, and it wasn't as effective. I have no idea what I did. All of these letters are for a font that I would end up making. And then thumbnails. So many thumbnails. So many sketchbooks these days just seem like they're just thumbnails. But that's just how it is when you're a comic artist. And then random idea for I think this was going to be like a watercolor illustration. This one never happened. I think I thought like this is an outfit that's supposed to be entirely made out of glass. Like specifically kind of like a stained glass look. And I think I just never thought the outfit looked right. Okay. Dear goodness. That's the end.
Next up, Sketchbook 4 to keep up this chronological order.
Alright, hello again. I'm not sure if it's going to be super obvious, but this is the second day of filming. But here we are. Sketchbook, I think, is for a typography class that I had to take. A lot of the illustration classes had a lot of overlap with graphic design, so there's that. Oh, that's better. But yeah, typography feels like kind of a random class to take for illustration, but since I did happen to be interested in comics as like kind of my niche, it seemed pretty applicable to formatting comics and the text layout of where everything goes. So yeah, I think a part of this initial typography project is that we had to make a logo that's just text to emphasize our brand. And so you can tell even from a couple years ago, I was thinking about the Dream Lab being my branding. Oh, there's even more of these. I think I came up with the first idea to just make the words in the shape of a cloud. That was my first idea, and I did all of these, and that was the design I wanted to go with anyway. And then I also did some like random doodles. I was playing around for my comic to have a font to represent like my two main characters, and then a font that could maybe represent like everyone else, or labels, or I guess narration is what you would call that. Because I think we also had a project where we had to make our own font. I used calligrapher. It ends up looking something a little bit like this, because I was inspired a lot by how a lot of weirdcore images just have those random, kind of vague, mostly threatening phrases on them, with just the most random images of like a kitchen or something. And I wanted to make a font that has that feels like very custom to those types of weirdcore images. I don't know why this was the phrase I was using to play around with different types of fonts, but it was. And then this is the font that I ended up going with for my project, and then this was the initial sketches for the font I would make for the comic, its initial prototype design. And then I hypothetically was going to do an extra credit assignment where it was supposed to be like a 3D sculptural thing. I thought about using the OCs to have this bit where they talk aloud and their speech bubbles become tangible and they're things that they can use to traverse an environment. Cool idea, but I ended up not having time to actually work on it. Then more thumbnails. I think this was for my final project. We had to do a partner project where we interviewed each other and then made magazine covers based on the interview. Pretty easy group project, since the most you actually have to collaborate on is just for some feedback with each other and just doing the interview. So, and then like the rest of the sketchbook is nothing too crazy. It's just webcomic sketches because I sketch all my panels digitally.
Sketchbook 4 is done. Let's move on to look at the first half of Sketchbook 5.
You can lie back down. Oh, big stretch again. Wow. That was very half-hearted. The next sketchbook is this behemoth. This one started out as the sketchbook for my first illustration class, and then carried on to a bunch of other stuff, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, I love the little skunkly. Maybe the best thing in this sketchbook, perhaps. I think this sketchbook best showcases how my process is when I'm doing assignments. Doing a bunch of sketches, almost kind of in this weird collage thing. Color palettes, notes, feedbacks. My beautiful quiz. We had this weird assignment called Dear Dada. It's based on something a couple of sisters, I believe, did. Basically, we had to track something about our lives for a week, from music to clothing to how much we said thank you, and then make it into data based on like when it was, what we were doing, who we were with, and you turn it into kind of a very aesthetically pleasing looking piece of design. And then we also had to do like a digital art poster design. I really like this sketch of this donkey. It still looks pretty nice. Yeah, I don't sketch animals too often. I think the reason why this one looked so good is because I was really pulling from a reference. Surprise, surprise. And then this was a planning for like a watercolor illustration that we did, which ended up working out for me. A lot of the students in that class didn't know jack about watercolor, but before I jumped into doing a lot of digital art for my comics and stuff, watercolor and ink was my main medium for illustrating characters and environments. And this project ended up being very similar to stuff I made in high school, where I would do these very detailed environmental illustrations with maybe a character in there or not. Ended up being something that consistently amongst professors, amongst industry professionals that I would meet, amongst like other artists and peers, when I ever had the watercolor illustration in my portfolio, people always had the most positive things to say about it. Which is sort of funny, because as I mentioned, it's the thing that's the most similar to stuff I was doing in high school. And so I'm like, sheesh, what am I doing here then? Why did I come here? That's a joke. I did genuinely learn a lot about illustration and was pushed to learn a variety of skills that I wouldn't have otherwise. This is a poster design. It's like for a newspaper article, you had to illustrate like I think it's called editorial illustration is the technical term. Pausing here because look at my little Tara illustration. She's so cute. I think this is the last project we did for the class. We did like a book illustration, but we also had to throw in some sort of collage element in there. But we had to redraw some sort of book cover, I believe. Basically one that we thought could be better. In order to look for ideas, I rewatched this video essay that came across my page on YouTube about horror book covers and how a lot of them just are missing that edge that makes horror so interesting. I tried to redraw it. Wasn't super happy with the final product. I think I tried doing some blurring effects when I was assembling all of the illustration stuff digitally, and I think it just looks like it was too much. I still got like a 90 or something on it, but I hold myself to too high of standards.
That's a wrap for my 3rd semester of college. Let's jump back to Sketchbook 3 to look at my 4th.
Sometimes dreams just kind of, their plot, if you can call it that, kind of things just happen, you know? And this was one of those. I had to do like a mandatory like one-on-one like get to know you meeting with a science professor that I had. And he mentioned something about having to reschedule a lot of meetings and stuff because his biology students, like, they left all of their frozen rats out or something, and so they couldn't do surgery or something weird, and so I went rat popsicle. Actually, speaking of webcomic, this is the map of the city that the webcomic takes place in. Oh my goodness, why is she so thin? What happened to this leg? Goodness. Sometimes my art goes in phases where sometimes my art style has phases where it has a little bit of how to say this, Mandela catalog alternate moment where the limbs just are like way longer than they should be. Oh, Ash with a V-neck, cursed. Goodness, these 2 sketches are still so good. What the heck is this? Oh, this is digital tools. Okay. That's at least what this half is. Illustration 2 was a fun class for college because I essentially spent the whole semester working on concepts for the webcomic. Basically, for that class, you could come up with your own projects, but there's also a type of project track you could go on where you spend the whole semester developing some sort of comic graphic novel thing. Cool epic behind the scenes backstory. Okay. Now we're just flip-flopping between digital tools and illustration 2. I think this digital tools project we had to make assets as if we were a hypothetical streamer. This actually ended up being really useful for using as reference for stuff I would need to make for the YouTube channel, so that was pretty nice, and I got to make a pretty sketchy style. Now we're flopped back to illustration 2. That's fun. And then random concept art. Fun. Again, goodness, that's, So that's kind of fun. But I was really glad that I got this opportunity to even fiddle with the webcomic. I think if I hadn't had a class to sort of like, had like a whole class and semester to hash out all these ideas and get feedback from my peers and a professor, I think I would have hit the summer after that class and had no idea what to do. And now we're back to digital tools. This was a group project where we had to make a bunch of assets for a hypothetical album for a hypothetical band. Then we got random sketches for a bunch of stickers that I made because my school hosted a sticker event where a bunch of artists could make their own stickers, and then you could register them, and for like I think 2 days like they were sold as like at a couple locations. Here are some. I still have some stickers. I have no idea what to do with these.
We now interrupt this sketchbook tour to make this announcement. Hey, you know how I said 5 seconds ago that I didn't know what to do with these stickers? Well, I've decided I'm selling them. If you want to take some of these off my hands, DM me on Instagram or send me an email, both of which are linked down below. They're pretty large, so they'll be $3 a piece, or $10 for a batch of 5. Shipping is free. Please, I do not want to hold on to these. Okay, plug over.
Sometimes I just make sketches like this, and it seems like I would have made like a digital illustration or something out of them, and that didn't happen. Sketch. There might be some like sketches for Instagram Reels that aren't up anymore. I think this was sketches that I was doing for my when I was announcing that the webcomic was something that was going to be made. I don't know why this is in the middle of the page. These are just some sketches that I think I did to warm up and some expressions. This is some sketches for Draw This in Your Style that actually ended up being posted and working out. I was gonna do like the Barbie meme thing. That sketch looks fine. I don't know why I didn't do it. I might have gotten into the digital line art phase and just gave up or something. I don't remember much these days. Another Instagram thing.
We're going back to Sketchbook 5 to look at my third and final year of college.
I think this is the only illustration to rep we have in this big sketchbook. This is just like this is a part of one of the pages I was making. And then we jump into printmaking here. Printmaking was something I did last year. Pretty fun class, actually. So this is just different notes on, I think, different illustrators in general, but this might also be printing. For the whole semester, we had to keep up with the theme, and so my theme was dreams. No surprise. Look at the channel name. And so I was coming up with different ideas. And then this is just like a random girl I drew in class, because I think I was bored. Doing a quick little Ash redesign, or just thinking about making some design tweaks. I don't think I ended up changing that much. And I would actually end up changing the design again. I think I was thinking about it because I was approaching the point where I was making the chapters where he gets introduced in the story, and so I'm like, okay, time for some last minute changes, if I have any. Yeah, okay, here's more of that. Those pages have your photos, we're gonna skip over those. And then I think this is just, I had some random spare pages, and so I was thinking about doing like a redesign for an alternate outfit for Tara, who you've seen a couple times.
We're getting close to the end with the final sketchbook. I have to finish things off strong. Let's do a speed round. The sketchbook's only half full anyway. In this sketchbook, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colored pencil sketches using only 3 colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colored pencil sketches to practice drawing objects for a still life project, this time with a full spectrum of colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 contour line drawings of natural things, quote unquote. 2 collage ideas to potentially recreate with pastels. Whoa. 8 drawings, a part of an assignment where the class went to a concert and drew some abstract representations of each song. And finally, 1, 2, 3 abstract compositions based on a personal experience.
That was it. That was quite the long haul of filming for me. Probably pop back to my editing self to see if she has any final thoughts about this whole process.
And here is said final thoughts. For one thing, every time I look at sketches from a few years ago, I'm always surprised by how much I've gotten better. Like, do a little bit of compare and contrast. Look at one of the first sketches compared to a more recent one. Crazy! Secondly, as a recent college grad, it's weird looking through all of these sketchbooks with the knowledge that this art represents a phase of my life that is over now. I'm gonna miss parts of that. Now, I gotta make art for my own reasons, and find ways to improve on my own. I hope you'll stick around and watch some of that process. That's all I have to say. This video is long enough. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe if you want, and sleep well. Bye bye!